Welcome to Let's Make a Game Platformer, episode 31. In last episodes, I've added the ability to send signals between entities. And as an example of this, I've added doors that open whenever someone steps on the pressure plate. Today, I'd like to, as I said, I'd like to mix it up a bit. Today, I move away from the functionality, adding new functionality to the game. Instead, I'd like to concentrate on enhancing the model renderer class to allow not only, at the moment, this class allows to only render stuff that is based on the model shape component, which means that it has to be one block and have some textures, and that's it. I'd like to add some more flexibility to the system. So I'll start off by separating the model renderer, which is going to be responsible for figuring out which entities in the game should be rendered, from how they are rendered. So I'd like to separate them. Basically, it's called model render component from the model shape component. So this class is basically responsible for figuring out, okay, which entities have to be rendered. So let me start adding changes. So first of all, I'll add here a new class. Get model instance. It's going to be an event. And it will have a location. Rotation 1, Y, and scale. And it will have also a list of model instance. And a method to append maybe model instance. That way, so the model renderer will be sending this event, specifying these parameters, and every system that is responsible for actually generating or providing how this should be drawn will be adding these instances to this event, and then finally the model renderer will basically render those instances. So I need to create here a getters for all the values, and also iterable model instance. Okay, so first of all, so we have this location here. Actually, we need vector 3 location vector, and it's going to be location get x, location get y, and location get z. We will have the rotation y. At the moment, we only specify one rotation around the y-axis. Later on, I can change this to add some other rotation if I wish to. So by default, it's going to be 0. And if this if is going to go here, rotation y equals rotation get rotate y. And finally, at the moment, we'll have scale here. By default, it's going to be 1, 1, 1. Okay, and the entity ref, I'll send an event. It's going to be get model instance, passing the location, passing the rotation, and passing the scale. And finally, I want to okay, so I have to change this to iterate through all the stuff that has model render component and location. So we have models index here. And at the beginning here, I will have a list of model instance, models, and in here I will models add all. I have to pass a collection in here, so I have to change the type of the get instances to be of collection, and I have to make sure that nothing modifies it, so collections unmodifiable collection. Okay, and finally I will render the models. So model render component should be so at the moment we are not using it, I think. Yes, so at the moment this is like a flag component saying this entity should be rendered somehow, which is why I don't need this anymore. And instead, okay, so for now, for the time being, I'll just modify the existing class and then I'll split the class to two separate classes. So we don't get prefab here. So whenever an object is, okay, let's do it this way. No, I'll split the classes immediately. So it's going to be model shape rendering system. I'll register it. And of course, profiles gameplay. And it will receive the event return shape model instance on the get model instance event on an entity that has, we'll add a new component, shape, rendered shape component, extends component, and it will have the values that the stuff that we had before in the model render component. So let me copy this quickly. So I'll copy this stuff to the new rendered shape component. And in here, so model shape, model, so rendered shape. So whenever this event is sent on an entity that has this component, specifying this is rendered using a shape, we'll basically copy the code we have in the model renderer here. So we'll get the prefab. If it's not there, we have to create it. Rendered shape, get model prefab. I will have the models and this in the other class. So it will store the instances and models. So first of all, maybe let's back up a bit. So we'll do model instances get entity ref result. If result is null, so we don't have model instance for created it yet first, we'll get the prefab, and if we don't have a prefab yet, okay, we have to inject all the stuff here, prefab manager, entity manager. You need to have shape provider. And texture atlas provider, so I also have to move the registration because this class will no longer know about the shapes anymore. So I'll have here life cycle system, and I'll have the initialize and destroy method. And initialize, I'll use the texture atlas registry and texture atlas provider. It's going to be here. Okay, so we are loading texture. In the destroy, we have to go through all the models, as well as what was done before as well. So models, to iterate through them. Models values, to iterate through them and dispose. Okay, so what I'm doing here is, so if we don't have an instance from this entity yet, we get the prefab, and if it's so we have to construct a model, and if it's not there, we create it based on the prefab, and if it is there, I have to result equals new model instance, passing the model. So maybe instead I'll do here similar to what was before. Models get model prefab model model. So if model is null, I create a model here, and I have to make sure that I add it here. Then I can use the model here, and I can return it. I have to also put it in the model instances. And finally in here, I have to do all the stuff that I was doing here before. So let me compare with the latest, copy the old code. So I need to do these stuff. In the system. So I have to, on the model instance, on the result, I have to apply the transform, getting the event get location, translate passing vector, yes. Then I have to rotate it. Result rotate by event get rotation y, and then I have to apply the scale. Passing the event get scale x, event get scale y, event get scale z, and finally apply the translation based on the render shape. Translate x, y, and z. Okay, so I made sure that everything is fine with the location and scale and everything, and I have to append the model instance here to the resulting rendering pipeline. So I don't need this anymore, and I don't need this anymore. So this should work. However, I don't really like the fact that we are never getting rid of those model instances here. So maybe I'll do it the same way it was done before. So receive event. So let me once again get the history, the old information about it, and use it here. Yes, I'll back up a bit. So after component is added, and the component that is added is a model, so rendered shape component. I'll make sure that there is an instance for this entity, and when it is removed, I'll remove the instance for it. And there should be rendered shape component here. And now so if a component has this, if an entity has this component, then definitely there's an instance for it there. So I no longer have to check that. So I can do that. And now I have to make sure that everything that has this component, or the prefabs already in the game, and there is quite a few of them, I have to make sure that they are using the rendered shape component instead, in addition to this one. So model render component, and it's using this renderer. So this is going to be something that I'll be adding in a lot of places. So let me once again do the find. Model render component. So in the prefabs, I have a player. So I have to say, okay, it has to be rendered, and the way it is rendered is defined by this guy, rendering system, rendered shape, and the same everywhere else here. So here, here, okay. So let me try to run it. Okay, so far so good. Stars are there and they are rotating. The torch is doing well. It's spawning a star, which is fine. Bug is there. It's behaving correctly. Doors are opening, platforms are moving. Okay, so now I'd like to maybe explain why I want to do this. So at the moment, the only way of rendering was like very fixed. Everything has to be this shape with the specified textures. What I'd like to do in some future episodes is, first of all, allow some custom models to be rendered. First of all, I want to change the platforms that they are not, at the moment the platform is stretching a texture to the size of the platform in the X direction, so right to left, and that is because we are using a cube for it, which is very hacky. Just I wanted to add something quickly. What I'd like to do in the future episode is basically tile the texture of that is used for the platform to fill out the whole platform in a proper way rather than stretching the texture. And to do that, I cannot use this approach of rendered shape. I have to add a different one, and that's why I want to add this flexibility. I can now add a different class that's going to be using the same event, get model instance, and we'll just create the model instance and the model itself differently. Another way I want to use this for is to render an actual models that you can export from Blender or some other software for generating 3D geometry and textures and animations and stuff. And this is going to be useful here as well. So what I achieved here is I separated the actual rendering of the models of the entities. So first of all, I mark that the entity is rendered using this model render component, which is like a flag component. There's no data in it at all. And then how it is rendered, actually not how, but what kind of model is used for rendering this entity is something that is defined here by the shape rendering system. If you've been very attentive, you've noticed here that I can now specify multiple instances to be associated with one entity. So multiple models can be rendered with one entity, and that might also come in useful later on, for example, for rendering shield, like the semi-transparent shield around the player if player is, for example, invulnerable to any damage or death. So I will add a new component to the player whenever he gains some kind of buff that will say invulnerable component, and there will be a system which says, oh, by the way, this rendered entity has this component, and if it does, I will just add another instance to be rendered, which is going to be just a shield picture around the entity, and then I can, voila, I can do some awesome stuff, overlaying multiple stuff, all based on one entity. Okay, that's it for this episode. Make sure to like it and subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on Twitter, link is in the description. Thanks for watching, bye!